Hi, I'm Abby.
And I'm Brenda, and together we are the B&A Group, and we're helping our organization helps to build a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community.
Today we are having something called Conversations in Black and White. Our goal with these conversations is to make difficult conversations feel more comfortable.
And today we are so fortunate to have Sophie Speciale join us. She is a senior BFA film production major at Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts. And she's here to discuss her article, Difficult Conversations Are One Step Towards Racial Equality. And welcome, Sophie. Hi.
Welcome.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. We're doing good. We're ready to have, another conversation.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about you and what you've been up to.
So I am finishing my last semester at Emerson. I'm working remotely as an intern for Shoe Money Productions and Voltage Pictures. And I just finished my senior thesis film. And I'm kind of working on the post-production part of that and finishing up the sound mixing and everything.
Very cool.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about I've heard of, is it Voltage Pictures?
Mm-hmm.
I've heard of it, but I don't know. Is that a major studio or what do they do?
They're a production company and a financing group. So they one of their bigger films that was at some major film festivals was the Ted Bundy film with Zac Efron. Extremely wicked and incredibly something along those lines. But they also they do financing for films, as I said, so they're always looking at different scripts and projects that they may want to buy and hop on board.
And you were saying that your role right now is doing a lot of reading of those scripts to sort of proof them and see what's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So I read the scripts and I summarize them. And then I kind of give my opinion on them about whether or not I think that they should be considered or like passed on.
Okay. And how many other interns are there? Or are you one of one?
I think I'm one of like maybe 10 or 15 interns there.
Very cool. Very cool.
And so if you could, speaking of scripts, like if you could write your own script in 10 years, in 15 years, where will Sophie be?
I guess I would love to eventually start my own production company and produce films that are of meaning to me, and that send personal messages about things that I've experienced in life.
Very cool.
Very nice. Yeah, it's something about being able to use, I guess, that space or platform to bring stories to life, and maybe have a particular message. So that sounds really cool to me.
Thank you.
And so we're super excited to talk with you today because, as we all know, we're living in some really interesting times, and it feels like, for me, every day that I wake up and I look on the news, it just, it's almost like, oh, it's another story about, a person of color or some sort of injustice that's kind of happening. I can't even really say in this world, but like in this country.
Right.
And what that feels like, it's just, the other day I had to kind of think about how I've been feeling, like my own sort of emotions, and the probably since January 6th, really since last year, but definitely after the whole January 6th incident happened. And I just find myself kind of revisiting every morning, like where we are in this country and what it means, for persons of color. And, there's all this conversation around, you know, racial inequities and white supremacy and white privilege and all of that stuff that's kind of buzzing around. And so for Abby and I, you know, we have lots of conversations offline about what that means for each of us individually, what it means for us collectively in terms of the work that we do. And so we like being able to come in this space and kind of talk to others, which is why we're so super grateful to talk with you today, because as someone who has written this beautiful personal article about your own experience and how you're thinking about where we are in the world today and how it's kind of impacting you, it seems so seamless to have you join us today, given, you know, where we are, where this country is, and then you've written your own sort of piece of your story. And so we'd like for you to share with us today that article and how it came to be. And we have lots of questions about that, but I guess I'll just give you a little bit of space to talk about the article.
Yeah. So I guess last summer I was seeing a new guy. We were dating for only a short period of time before this happened. And I think to start, I think it's important to note that I had never really felt very strongly about my political beliefs. I kind of went around knowing that I was a Democrat, but not really knowing what that meant to me. And so when I kind of first found out that my boyfriend was on the opposite side, a Republican, I was kind of like unsure about how I felt about that, but I didn't feel like it would impact our relationship. And then what I write about in the article is this incident that happens where I'm at his house swimming in his pool, and I notice on a pool chair there's a towel with the Confederate flag on it. And I felt like instantly like just shocked and uncomfortable. But I also wasn't sure if that was like the appropriate reaction to be having, because I knew that it was a symbol that was very hurtful, but like as a white person, it didn't directly affect me. But I still felt like it was really wrong. And I felt like as an advocate for Black Lives Matter and an anti-racist person, I had to stand up and do something about it. I didn't feel like I could just let it go.
Sophie,
and
can I jump in and ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because something just popped into my head with what you just said. So my first question is, was that the first time when you were at the pool and you see the towel, is that the first time that you have experienced something like that so directly? Like it's right there in the moment. You know, for a lot of us, we might hear about something on TV or read about something in the newspaper, but was that the first time where you, in the moment, were confronted with something such as that?
Yes, definitely. That's the first time. And that's why there was just this wave of confusion, because I didn't know exactly how to deal with it.
Okay. And so there you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's hard because my boyfriend at the time, he was raised by a Republican father, and he didn't really know any different. He didn't understand why. I mean, I think he knew and he was aware that this was a hurtful thing, but he didn't think it wasn't his towel, it was his dad's. And so he didn't feel like it was his fault. He didn't feel like it was an issue. And so I respect that, but I don't know. I just still felt like I couldn't just be like, okay, it's fine, it's not yours. And I decided to leave that day because I didn't feel comfortable being at that house, and I felt like this is the moment that I need to take a stand, and I need to not just be like, okay, let's get rid of it, let's hide it, but let's go home and think about this and think about where my beliefs stand.
Well, I'm just trying to imagine, like, in that moment, like, I know what my initial reaction is when I see it. You know, that's from the lens of my experience, what I understand about what that symbol has meant in this country, but more importantly for people of my culture,
Mm.
right? And so I'm real curious about, you know, when you first in that moment, and I know you said it was just, I would imagine you were probably just taken aback a little bit. Like, am I seeing what am I seeing what my eyes are telling me that I'm seeing? You know, and
Yeah.
then also like your immediate afterthoughts about that. Because for me, when I see that symbol, it just, I can remember when I saw it as as a young person, um, probably in my late teen years or something like that, after I understood a little bit more about, the history. But now in my response then versus when I see it now, it's just, what it evokes in me almost immediately, what type of emotions that I feel. And so I'm just curious for you, like those immediate
Yeah.
emotions that you felt.
Well, it was interesting because it happened right after George Floyd's murder, and when people were starting to ban these symbols, like I know they were banned at NASCAR events, and so it felt really relevant. But I also started to think about my teachers and my friends who always taught me like to stand up for important things. And then I thought about my friends that were Black, and if I hadn't chosen to stand up, like what they would think of me, and that they would be disappointed in me. And I wanted to kind of show strength and respect for them. And so I just felt like, I think immediately I just felt um, maybe some guilt, like just that I don't know that um yeah, some guilt that this was kind of happening in my hands, and that um I don't know, I guess I felt like in some way that um if I didn't do anything, then it would be my fault.
It's interesting to me because I would imagine that for you, it was an overwhelming feeling of not just what you described as maybe guilt, but just this sense of responsibility that I
Yeah,
do something.
yeah, exactly. That's a better word for it. And what I did immediately was I got in my car and I called my friend who is,
Well, wait a minute. So you get out of the pool and
yeah,
you
That's what
just
I wanted to
leave?
know.
Do you just say, I'm
I
going
just,
home?
no, I said I needed to take a moment. So I went to my car because I was just unsure of how I should feel. And I have really amazing friends because one of my best friends from Emerson is a political communication major. So she's very aware of everything in terms of politics. And she kind of has opened me up to this world of politics and made me feel more of a sense of who I am and what politics mean to me. So I really respect her opinion. So I called her and I told her what happened. I said, am I feeling like the right way about this? Like, I just wanted confirmation that I was just like justified, that I was upset about this. And she's like, yeah, you can be upset about this. You need to be upset about this. And that was really empowering.
And then what was the reaction or the conversation like with your ex after this kind of whole thing went down, or how?
Yeah, it was really complicating because we had a conversation that night
Mhm.
after it happened, and it was really hard because I felt like I needed to end things. I was already having doubts about other things in our relationship, but this was kind of just set everything off, and I just felt like this was the end. But he started to make me feel like it was unfair to end a relationship over a political dispute.
Mhm.
He told me that his mom was a Democrat and his dad was a Republican, and so this made him feel like that our relationship could work. but I think, I don't know, I didn't, he was very, very like closed off in terms of how he felt about his views. And so I asked if he would share more of his views with me, so I could understand them better. Because he was like, I agree with you, this is wrong that my dad has this towel. But he's had so many hard conversations with his dad that he was kind of like, he got to the point where he's like, I can't always be fighting with my dad, and I just have to accept his views. But as we continued talking over the next few weeks about our personal views, I just grew more and more sure that I couldn't be in a relationship with someone who was so, I guess, had such opposite beliefs as me. And I knew that we had the election coming up, and there was going to be some serious moments where we were going to have to be okay with each other's views. And I just knew that I couldn't have a relationship with him and be able to like understand his side when I felt so strongly on my side.
It's interesting because we talk about, Republican versus Democrat, but what you really, to me, and Brenda, you can certainly jump in there, what you described in that incident isn't necessarily Republican versus Democrat, it's racism.
Yeah.
You can be a Republican and not be racist, but I think that's interesting. And you had mentioned like you had some prior discussions with your ex-boyfriend kind of prior to this incident, and were those sort of equally as difficult and sort of stalemates as well, or?
Yeah, they were really difficult because, as I've said, like I wasn't very aware of my political beliefs. So he would bring things up about how he felt. And I would know in my heart that that was wrong to me, but I didn't know how to argue with him about it. I didn't know how to express my side and say, this is why I feel that's wrong. So I would be left feeling really defeated and just like unsure of my feelings because I didn't know how to express them.
Let's see. Yeah. Makes it complicated when politics and all of this sort of converges, and then there's also kind of picking apart, like, what do I believe that's different versus right and wrong?
Yeah.
This, can all come in one package, but it can also be, separated a little bit. So it makes it complicated. Yeah.
And for you, I'm curious about, so you said a couple, there was some period afterwards. So after the incident at the house, the two of you engaged in what I would imagine to have been a series of conversations, particularly centered around this incident. And so after talking with him, because I know you said, you had further conversation, and then it just became even clearer to you that this is probably not a person whose values are closely enough aligned to mine that I would want to be in this type of a relationship with. And so I'm curious about, when in those conversations, did you feel like that he just didn't have an awareness or around all that symbol means? In other words, his understanding or his knowledge about the history of a particular group of people, of Americans, such as Black Americans in this country. Do you feel like he just was clueless and just not aware about the history, or that he knew, and because it doesn't really impact me, or, it has not in any way kind of altered, my life, that I don't really think about it much? Like, where do you think all that kind of came from? Because I know you said that he had, I guess, discussions with his dad. So so that to me indicates there is some awareness. So if he had discussions with his dad, and then he just decided, dad is dad, or whatever the case may be. But so for you, did you feel like, yeah, you do know, and maybe you should be doing more, or like, how was it? I'm just curious for you what that was like.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I did feel like he didn't understand a lot of the issues. He seemed like he was aware of like the hurtfulness of the symbol, but he didn't think like, I don't know, he just didn't, I don't think he was aware that he needed to kind of stand up and do something if it was an issue to him. And yeah, as time kind of progressed and we continued to have those conversations, I felt like he wasn't aware of kind of what was going on and why, that symbol was so hurtful, but also why some of his beliefs were not correct.
It sounds like, for him and what I believe to be for a lot of people, particularly young people, is that they're not able to connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
So because a lot of times we're living in the moment. We're kind of living in the moment of whatever's in the news space today. So what's in the news space today is, what happened with George Floyd, and all of the instances prior to that last year, meaning starting with Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia and Breonna Taylor, and then we had George Floyd, and then we had, Rashad in Georgia, and a couple of other instances after that. And a lot of people are kind of living in that space now and not really having a full understanding of, no, this comes with a really, really long history. A really, really long history of brutality and terrorism and discrimination and all of those things towards, Black people and people of color. And sometimes I think that there's just not that awareness of that. And so with that not being in place, that is very difficult for maybe this gentleman and others to kind of put it all together, to understand the gravity of what this is really about.
Yeah,
and it's a humanity issue. And
I think it was really difficult for him because he was like, this is how he was raised by, like, his views came from his dad. And I was questioning them and I was challenging them, and I think he was really like taken back by that and kind of like just, I don't know, he just kind of wanted to fight more. And he really didn't budge on how he was viewing things.
I'm wondering a little bit about the journey that came from having this incident and then the decision to write about it. And I'm so glad you did, because it's such a good conversation now. But what kind of led you down that path? And then I'm also really interested to hear about people's reactions to your article.
Yeah. So we were still dating when I decided to write it.
Okay.
So I asked his permission. And at first he was like, I don't really know why you want to write about this. But I love to write. I write scripts, and I journal, and I love just it kind of expressing things. And when incidents like this happen, I just kind of want to see it on paper. It just helps me kind of process things. And so as I was writing and as I was kind of reflecting, I thought, well, this is something that like needs to be talked about and needs to be seen, because it could happen to anyone. And I think people might think, oh, my boyfriend has these views and I have these views, but what happens when that like becomes an issue? And so as I wrote, I just felt like I needed to share this. So at first it wasn't going to be something that I felt needed to be published. I just wanted to write it down just so I could process what happened. But as I kind of saw the words on the paper, I thought this needs to be seen. We broke up before it was published. And I think he was pretty hurt by it. I remember getting a message from him after we broke up and after my article was published, where he's saying that he thought that I broke up with him for my article, to make my article better.
Wow.
Which wasn't the case. And the article had nothing to do with our breakup. It was clearly our issues. But that was like the only real like negative response I got from it. I think people were really happy that I kind of was sharing my story, my like really personal story.
Yeah.
And I talked to some of my Black friends too to get their opinion because I wanted it to be like really respectful. And I wanted it to kind of serve a more of a purpose than just tell a story. And my cousin, who is half Black, helped me kind of insert some of the facts and the kind of empowering message that my article has. And I'm really glad that I found other perspectives, because as a white person, I could have really, I guess, told the story and not had a significant message at the end.
Well, it seems like throughout the journey of having this experience, you've chosen again and again to be actively anti-racist, which is what the article talks about. You know, you did not sit back and say, you know, I'm not going to say anything. It's kind of uncomfortable. This might cause waves. When you saw the towel, you know, you acted with your instincts, but then even going a step further to write about it. Again, I think from my perspective, it shows like a clear anti-racism stance of it's not just enough to sort of do that, but then to write this next part where people have to think about it and think about what would you do in that situation, or what would I, you know. So I really appreciate that you wrote about it and published it. I think it's really great.
Thank you.
And have you had conversations with, I'm sure you've had conversations with your friends, but others around, you know, what would you do, you know, as a person, as a white person, and if you're in a situation or a social or professional, whatever it is, and you're in a setting and there is racist conversation going on, you know, about any group of people, like, would you say anything? You know, what would your response be? Are you having those types of conversations? Do you find yourself having now, or maybe you were having before?
Yeah, I think so. When I was in Boston, I was a nanny for a family with two young kids, and the mom and I were really close, and we would talk a lot about how she could teach her kids to kind of stand up. She read my article, and she told me that she comes from a generation where like there was less of this going on, um, and she didn't really know exactly how to teach her kids to stand up. But kind of reading my article, I think made her feel like more empowered and a better teacher for her kids.
I think that people can, I think white people in particular, can really have this fear with these uncomfortable conversations that they're going to mess it up or put their foot in it or not do it the right way. But really, the first step is to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And particularly with kids too. I mean, obviously, you want to sort of tailor it to their age level, but it's never too soon to start talking about some of these ideas to help them become social justice oriented and be able to stand up for what they believe is right too. So that's really cool that she's thinking about it too, based off your experience.
She's doing a great job. She's, reading different books to the kids and talking to them and making them very aware of what's going on.
I love that.
I'm curious. I'm wondering, last summer, when you see all of these protests that were going on, you know, in all the, you know, across the world, really, but definitely in a lot of the major cities in this country, what do you think is some of the lessons that all of us could take from what we clearly saw, you know, in front of us last summer? Like, just, I'm curious from your perspective, you know, some of the lessons to take from that and how that should inform us in terms of how moving forward and pushing this conversation, like Abby said, pushing it along. Like I said, I think we're in this reckoning right now. Here we are with what happened in January 6th. Like, what are the lessons that we should be taking from all of this? Like, what's happening from your view?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned from seeing all of this is that it's time that like white people stand up, because it's like historically been, these issues have been held on the backs of Black people, and that they have done everything that they can to kind of stand up and make a change, but now it's our turn. And we saw that after George Floyd's murder, like on Instagram, everyone was kind of taking a time to show their voice. But as that kind of fizzled out and stopped, I realized like that needs to continue. And I think I need to be a spokesperson, because I can't just let other people do that now. I need to take my responsibility and try and do my best to spread awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that will include continuing to write about topics such as these? Maybe not so personal, but
Yeah,
just.
I think so. As I said, I love to write, and especially I love to write scripts. And so I'm always kind of writing about different impactful stories and lessons. So I definitely want to write a script about some racial issues and how we deal with them, and that's definitely gonna happen in the future.
Well, I was truly happy to stumble upon your article, and just admiring what it must have took to put something so personal on paper for all of us to kind of see and read, and how you were able to allow a piece of yourself for a common good for all of us, to help move us all along a little bit further along this road. Thank you for even considering doing that, and then actually doing it.
Yeah,
So
well, thank you for
takes a lot, I would
everything.
imagine, to do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great example for other white people of bravery in your experiences and sharing the experiences, and that if we talk about things, they can get better. And not talking about it or not having conversations doesn't solve anything. So writing that article, I hope, not just in this situation, but all over, people who read it, I would imagine there were conversations that stemmed from it. So it was brave, and wonderful. So.
Yeah.
And also speaking to just the types of conversations that we need to have with, our partners. Like, probably, we don't necessarily think about that as like the first question to ask when you start dating someone. Maybe now we all are.
It's definitely going to be the first question I ask from now on.
Right? Like before it was, you like roller coasters, or, now it'll be, something a little more substantive, but that's where we are. And so, the history of all societies, is we move along, and, it's things happen, and then we sort of respond to in the moment of where we're living. And so one of the last questions I would like to ask you is just, what did you think about the events of January the 6th?
Mm-hmm.
I was very, I guess, upset and disturbed that this could happen, and I kind of started to try and like make myself think about like what was going on in people's head on the other side, and I just felt very confused as to how something like that could have happened, and that was kind of like a big eruption of everything that's kind of happened so far, and that there needs to be a change from this, and I want to kind of help the change come to light.
Mm-hmm.
Were you at all surprised?
Sorry, I didn't hear you there.
Were you surprised? I think is what she said.
Was I surprised? Honestly, no. Unfortunately, I honestly am surprised it didn't happen sooner.
Right.
And sooner, you mean in the previous administration, or just sooner some years ago?
Yeah, some years ago.
Okay.
because like there's been such a battle between Democrats and Republicans, and it's unfortunate that we have to be so against each other, but I think there needs to be like a better understanding of both sides.
Mhm. Yeah.
Smart words.
Yeah, I think better understanding and more communication.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
between both parties, but also just people, because
Mhm.
it can go, it's so much more than political parties.
Right.
It just is people not communicating or thinking they're so much different than I am. How, versus the whole we're in it together. We have got to travel this road um, toward a common goal.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was thinking also with what happened at the Capitol and seeing those images again with someone with a Confederate flag in the Capitol. It was really striking after having read your article as well, just that image. And I wonder how it felt for you. The reaction, I felt like from the media and from most people, was horrified. And
Mhm.
that was helpful or reinforcing or reinforcing to say, hey, I know I did the right thing. Like this image is incredibly powerful, and look, all these other people are feeling it too.
Yeah, I think that the symbol became even more hurtful when it was used on January 6th, and I just kind of felt like I'm really glad that I did stand up, because um, I could have, pushed it away and pretended it wasn't an issue. And then when I saw it being used, I realized how much of an issue it was.
Right. Very much so.
Yeah, it's nice to be on the right side of history, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Sophie, tell us, for those that will be interested in seeing and reading your article, where can we find it?
So it's published in Emerson's student newspaper, the Berkeley Beacon. So you can find it on their website under the opinion pieces there. And it's also, I think it's linked on my Facebook as well. So
Your Facebook is.
my Facebook is Sophie Speciale.
Very nice. Yeah, I think everyone should take it's not a super long article, but take a couple of minutes to read it and digest and see what feelings it brings up, because it is a very powerful situation that you've described.
Absolutely worth the read. I think that's what they say
Absolutely.
in the literary world, worth the read. So it's been a pleasure having you join us here this afternoon, Sophie Speciale. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much.
And again, we just want to, or Abby, I'll let you.
I was just going to say, and just for another quick information, the B&A Group supports diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in all workplaces through conversations and individualized solutions, so all employees and people feel seen, heard, and safe. If you want to find out more about the B&A Group and the work that we do, you can go to www.bandagroup.net or email at info@bandagroup.net, or follow us on Twitter at the BA Group 1.
We'd love to talk with you. So we love having conversations. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.